I'm Chris.
And I'm Bert.
And we just saw X-Men. 9?
It can't possibly be 9. It would have to be of bad quality at this point. I don't think I have a lot to say about this X-Men other than really enjoying it and getting lost in it like when you were a kid and you saw your first superhero movie. I felt that way watching this one.
I liked the story a lot in this. I think there was a little bit too much going on, but I didn't mind it because I liked what was going on. It wasn't annoying to watch. Like, Batman vs. Superman had a lot of stuff going on, but I just didn't care.
None of it linked together or had any effect.
Yes, that's another point. This movie had, like, everything directly related to the main plot, either through character motivations or Apocalypse himself. And so I liked that a lot. I liked...
The villain was really good, and I still don't believe that it was, what's his name?
Yes.
Isaac.
We loved Apocalypse in this. I think Apocalypse is one of the best villains in a superhero film since, I don't even know, like, maybe Dr. Octopus in Spider-Man 2. Can you think of anybody more recent than that?
No.
Apocalypse was awesome in this, and I think it had entirely to do with special effects. I loved that he was a real person in a costume. I loved looking at him, and he just looked so right in the world. He was played by an actor we both really like, Oscar Isaac. You'll know him as Poe from Star Wars, but he was in A Most Violent Year and Drive, and he's a really good actor, and she doesn't believe it was him.
It was.
I'm pretty sure he was using contacts, so like you can't see his eyes because he looked very soulless, and I really liked that about Apocalypse. I just, his face was so good.
I really liked all the action scenes and the outsmarting and the way things like moved from scene to scene. It was just really attention grabbing to me.
I'm really surprised that this movie's getting a lot, like, bad criticism. The criticism I've been hearing is that the action is boring, the action is bad, and that's not the point of these movies. I can get, like, after Civil War, the action being so good, all of the best X-Men movies were exactly like this. I think people are, like, forgetting that the first two X-Men and Days of Future Past were very slow and the action wasn't very good, but that's because the action isn't the focus of these movies. It never was. The focus of these movies was, like, the difference in ideals between Professor Xavier and someone else.
Well, what I don't understand is that the one before this, or that might have been a Wolverine one, but the one where Wolverine and that Asian woman fall in love, I can understand how people could look at that movie and be bored and it maybe didn't meet their expectations. But then looking at a movie like this and saying that this one's boring or wasn't action enough, that doesn't make sense to me.
What I really loved about the action in this movie was that it wasn't the focus of the scene, like the big fight with Apocalypse at the end. You didn't really see what was happening. You saw it like it was happening in the background while a different character was doing something important. It's about characters, and that's what I like about X-Men so much. I didn't realize that this entire movie took place in the past. I thought it was going to be like Days of Future Past again, where it was like switching back and forth.
I thought it was a nice change. I liked that it was all taking place in one time.
I think the reason they're doing this is because they want... It's probably hard to keep getting the actors that play Professor Xavier and Magneto. I think they're also trying to, like, phase them out.
Really?
Because they're very old, like how the next Wolverine is the last Hugh Jackman Wolverine, because he feels like he's getting too old to play the character and they need to replace him before he leaves.
How many more movies do you foresee them making?
That was actually going through my head while I was watching this movie, specifically the scene with Quicksilver, which was really, really good, because I was thinking about how Hugh Jackman is leaving, and I was like, people are going to look back at the series and say how the ones with Hugh Jackman are good and everything else afterwards is bad.
Do you think that's what's going to kill this series?
No. Quicksilver was still a really good character, and I'm still going to care about what's going on.
Even when he's gone.
They're doing such a good job at setting up new characters that I'm not really afraid that they're going to run out. So, like, in 20 years, if they're still making X-Men movies, I think they can still have the potential to be really good. even without Wolverine, even without Professor Xavier.
I agree. I think you're right. I'm just afraid that they're not going to know when to stop.
But I also do really hate that. That's like I love the idea of changing it. I don't like sitcoms because they stay the same for 8 years and never do anything new. They never have any characters grow. And by switching characters, by changing them up, they have to do things like that.
I also really like to see the way that they're passing on the torch. Like the way that the new characters and the old characters are interacting and the way they're affecting each other and influencing each other. I think that's a really good merriment. And I think you're right. I think they'll do a good job, and we do care about the new characters.
Is this your favorite X-Men movie? I know you haven't seen all of them, and I know you don't remember some of them. But
It's my favorite one that I remember. Yes. But
I think my favorite is still. I really like X-Men 2, and I really like Days of Future Past. They made a movie to retcon the bad movies, and I've loved when watching that movie, realizing what was going on. It was hilarious. I think out of the 4 good X-Men's, not the Wolverine movie, this is probably the worst one.
really?
Yes. But it's still a good movie. It's definitely not as bad as everybody's saying it is.
So you'd still recommend it, I'm assuming?
Yeah.
I would too. I
Definitely.
would recommend the whole series. Alice in Wonderland was bad.
We also saw Alice in Wonderland 2.
It was
Through
bad.
the Looking Glass.
It was bad.
It was bad.
Bad.
It was bad.
No, it was bad.
Do you want to know why it was bad?
Why was it bad?
Because the writer of this movie should make video games instead of movies.
That can't be the only reason.
Probably the only reason.
Well, that's
bad,
sad,
bad acting
bad.
doesn't ruin a movie for me. Bad directing doesn't ruin a movie for me. It's bad writing that ruins a movie for me.
Okay, but bad writing, bad acting, bad CGI, bad characters? Is that enough to top off
Both
the
of
cake?
these movies, the worst aspect of them are the story. Would you agree with that?
There's so many things I hate. I can't.
You think Mad Hatter as a character is worse than him doing a CGI dance at the end of the movie to appease all the little kids?
His face looked so awful in this movie, and I can't forgive anyone for that.
I want to get through this quickly because this movie was bad. That's all you need to know.
Bad.
It was like a video game, though. Like, the amount of repetition in the movie was appalling to me. And that's the sort of thing you need in a video game because, like, there could be hours in between cutscenes and you don't really... you need, like, constant reminders of what you're doing. So with video games, that sort of thing makes sense to me. But in this is like an hour-and-a-half movie. And the number of times they mentioned Chronosphere was disgusting. They probably said that word like 100 times.
I think the part that was absolutely worst for me was when the what's her name? The White Queen. When she's like, yeah, I ate the cookie, I'm sorry. And that's all it took for the Queen of Hearts to change and be a good person. They couldn't have done a worse job with that. That was an awful ending. I mean, that was so 2
Video
seconds
gamey?
put together. This movie was awful.
I really like what Billy Bob Thornton said a few years ago about how video games are ruining movies. Because people really, like, ganged up on it. But I completely agree with them. I think the video game industry is becoming, like, such a huge thing. And they're trying to appeal to people who play games now instead of keeping film its own thing. And it's making it muddled. It's making things like RoboCop, the remake, where the action scenes are, like, there's no gravity. And this movie is a really good example of that. Like, every scene in this movie was set up to be like a level in a video game. It had nothing to do with the narrative at all. It was just terrible.
I can't say I'm following you 100%, but I am following the fact that the overall, like, this is the goal and the process of getting there it was weirdly split into little tasks and didn't quite compute and something was wrong with it. That's for sure. It's bad. Don't see it.
I really hate how Tim Burton had an idea for a movie, and that even though it was bad, it still was his visual style. And now every live-action Disney movie looks exactly like it.
Yes.
Like,
and now Tim Burton movies don't look like it. Maybe that's why he stopped making movies in his style.
did Disney copyright his style?
Maybe he's trying to make a new style now.
This movie doesn't deserve this much of a review. It's bad.
Tire t-shirt or a CGI Cheshire Cat t-shirt, reevaluate your life. And please don't see this movie.
Did you like how they were advertising Alan Rickman in it? Like in every trailer, and then he had 2 lines in the movie.
Do you like how, I can't stand the Mad Hatter, I can't believe Johnny Depp's face could be made to make a wonderful Mad Hatter, and instead he was a CGI nothing. It was so
It's too symmetrical.
I'm ending this. It's over. The review's done.